Most people spend quarter-dollar coins every day without a second thought. But what if I told you that one single quarter in your pocket could be worth more than a brand new car? Today, I'm going to reveal 3 extremely valuable U.S. quarter-dollar coins that collectors are desperately searching for right now. These coins look almost exactly like regular quarters, which is why thousands of people accidentally spend them without realizing their true value. Some of these quarters were made with rare minting errors. Some were produced in very low numbers, and others became valuable because of historical mistakes that the U.S. Mint never intended to release. What makes this even crazier is that these rare quarters are still being found in circulation, inside old collections, piggy banks, and even loose change from stores. One lucky find could change your life overnight. Where every small piece of metal carries a giant American story, and today you are holding time in your hands with the 2020 National Park Quarter, a coin that marks the powerful finale of a historic journey through the lands, ideas, and spirit of the United States. This is not just a quarter. This is the closing chapter of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a 10-year mission by the United States Mint to honor the most meaningful national parks and protected places across the nation, and in 2020, that journey reached its emotional and historic peak. These coins were released at a moment when the world slowed down and history pressed pause, yet the Mint continued to tell America's story through art, metal, and memory. Each 2020 National Park Quarter captures a different landscape, a different chapter, a different heartbeat of the nation, from wide-open grasslands that whisper stories of native tribes and pioneer dreams to tropical coastlines where ocean winds carry centuries of cultural survival. These designs were chosen not for decoration, but for meaning. They reflect conservation resilience and the idea that America's true wealth lives in its land and people. The artists and engravers poured generations of symbolism into every line, every shadow, every animal, every horizon, making these quarters miniature history books that fit in your pocket. And for collectors, this year is especially powerful because it represents the final year of an era no more. America the Beautiful Quarters would ever be made after 2020, making these coins instant historical markers struck in both Philadelphia and Denver mints, and also in special proof finishes for collectors who understand that the end of a series often becomes the beginning of long-term value, but beyond mint marks and finishes. There is a deeper story. This program began in a time of optimism and expansion and ended during uncertainty and reflection, making the 2020 National Park Quarters a mirror of America itself. Strong, challenged, diverse, and enduring. When you study these coins closely, you see more than scenery. You see the government's commitment to preservation. You see respect for indigenous history. You see the balance between nature and progress. And you see why coin collecting is not about money alone, it is about memory, legacy, and identity. This is why a simple quarter from 2020 can carry the weight of centuries, and why collectors, historians, and everyday Americans continue to search their change, hoping to find one, because holding it feels like holding a piece of the American journey. And in this video, we are going to dive deep into that journey, exploring the stories behind the parks, the meaning behind the parks, the meaning behind the designs, the historical context of the program, and why the 2020 National Park Quarter stands as one of the most important modern coins ever released. So stay with Coins Quarter Dollar, because once you understand this coin, you will never look at pocket change the same way again. Now let us slow down and step deeper into the heart of the 2020 National Park Quarters, because every single design from this year was chosen to speak when words could not, and each coin represents a final salute to America's natural legacy. The year 2020 featured 5 powerful sites, and each one was selected to close the program with meaning, strength, and diversity. These were not random parks. They were symbols, places where history, nature, and humans struggle. Meet the First release reminds us that America's story did not begin with modern cities, but with ancient cultures and sacred land. These designs highlight wildlife not as decoration, but as guardians of the ecosystem, animals shown in motion, strength, and survival. Because the United States Mint wanted to remind the world that preservation is an active responsibility, not a passive memory. The engravers studied photographs, field reports, and historical records to ensure authenticity down to the smallest detail, because a national park quarter must do more than look beautiful. It must tell the truth in metal. And when you turn the coin in your hand, the weight feels the same as any other quarter, but the meaning is heavier. This was the last chance for the Mint to speak through this program, and they used it wisely. The scenes show balance between skyland and life, carefully arranged to guide the eye and the mind, and collectors noticed immediately. Many said these final designs felt more emotional, more thoughtful, almost like a goodbye letter written in steel and copper. And during a year when many Americans were confined indoors, these coins quietly traveled through the nation, reminding people of wide-open spaces, freedom, and endurance. And that contrast alone makes the 2020 National Park quarters historically unique. Future generations will look back and see these coins as artifacts of a turning point. Not just the end of a series, but the end of a chapter in American daily life. And for collectors, this is where the hunt becomes serious. Mint state examples, proof versions, low mintage rolls, and error coins suddenly carry extra weight, because end-year coins traditionally gain stronger demand. And this program was already beloved by schools, families, and new collectors across the country, which means millions of people formed emotional connections to these quarters. Emotional connection is what drives long-term collectability. And when emotion meets history, value often follows. But even if value never rises, these coins already succeeded. They educated, inspired, and preserved stories that could have been forgotten. And as we continue this video, we will break down each 2020 park design one by one, exploring the history of the land, the symbolism chosen by the artists, the hidden details most people miss, and how these coins fit into the larger story of American coinage. So stay locked in, because what started as spare change ends as a legacy. And by the end of this journey, you will understand why the 2020 National Park Quarter is not the end of a story, but the moment it became timeless. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a coin that marks the end of a 10-year American journey. A coin that quietly says, this was the last time the United States told its national park story through everyday money. That is the power of the 2020 National Park Quarter. This is not just another release. This is the final heartbeat of the America the Beautiful series. The moment when art history, nature, and national identity all met on a single piece of metal. And once you realize that every 2020 quarter is a farewell message, you start to feel the weight of it differently. These coins were born in a year that tested the nation when parks stood empty, roads were silent, and yet these quarters kept moving from hand to hand, carrying images of freedom, open land, and survival. And that contrast alone turns them into time capsules. Each design was crafted with intention. Every animal pose, every mountain line, every horizon was selected to represent endurance and continuity, because the Mint knew this series would never return. And endings matter in history. Endings define how stories are remembered. And that is why collectors pay attention to final year coins, why museums archive them, and why future generations will study them, not as spare change, but as cultural markers. This is the moment where a simple quarter becomes a witness to an era. And in this video, we are not just talking about coins, we are uncovering why the last chapter often becomes the most powerful chapter, why the 2020 National Park Quarter stands apart from every other modern coin, and why years from now people will look back and say, this was the moment American coinage quietly said goodbye to a decade-long dream. So stay with Coins Quarter Dollar, because once you hear this story, you will never ignore a 2020 quarter again, where history lives in your hands. And today we open the door to one of the most powerful and quietly symbolic coins ever released in modern American history. the 2003 Maine $quarter a coin, that looks simple at first glance yet carries centuries of exploration, survival, independence, and national identity inside a single piece of metal. Imagine holding a coin that tells the story of the ocean, the forests, the fight for freedom, and the soul of a state that has always stood strong on the edge of America. This is not just a quarter. This is Maine, the pine tree state, the last star of the original colonies, the place where America meets the sea. And in this video, we go deep into every detail, every symbol, every decision, and every hidden meaning behind the 2003 Maine State Quarter, a story so rich and detailed that it can carry a full 2-hour journey through time. The Maine Quarter was released as part of the legendary 50 State Quarters program, one of the most successful numismatic programs in United States history, a program that reconnected millions of Americans with their pocket change and turned everyday coins into storytellers. Maine was honored as the 23rd state in the series, reflecting its position as the 23rd state to join the Union in 1820, carved out of Massachusetts, during a time when the young nation was still. State Quarters program, one of the most successful numismatic programs in United States history, a program that reconnected millions of Americans with their pocket change and turned everyday coins into storytellers. Maine was honored as the 23rd state in the series, reflecting its position as the 23rd state to join the Union in 1820, carved out of Massachusetts. During a time when the young nation was still defining itself, Maine entered the Union as part of the Missouri Compromise, a political balancing act that shaped the future of America, and that spirit of independence, balance, and strength is exactly what this coin represents. At the center of the reverse design stands a majestic schooner cutting through the waters, a direct tribute to Maine's deep maritime heritage. For centuries, the people of Maine depended on the sea for trade, fishing, shipbuilding, and survival. The schooner is not just a ship. It is a symbol of hard work, craftsmanship, and the courage to face the unknown. Beyond the waves, behind the schooner, rises a single tall pine tree, a powerful and deliberate choice. The eastern white pine once dominated the forests of Maine and was so valuable that it was claimed by the British Crown for ship masts. Long before independence, the pine tree became a symbol of resistance and freedom, representing the natural wealth that helped build nations and fuel revolutions. Above the scene shines the North Star, a guiding light that speaks to navigation, direction, and purpose for sailors. It was a literal guide across dark waters for the people of Maine. It represents staying true to one's course, no matter how harsh the conditions, and beneath it all appears the state motto, De Rego, meaning I lead, a bold statement from a state that has always led through resilience, innovation, and quiet strength. This design was carefully chosen from hundreds of submissions and approved by the governor of Maine and the United States Treasury. Every line, every shape, and every element was meant to communicate identity, pride, and history. The obverse of the coin features the familiar portrait of George Washington, redesigned during the State Quarters era, with sharper details and a more modern feel, connecting the foundation of the nation with the individual stories of each state. The Maine Quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint for circulation, with additional proof versions struck at the San Francisco Mint collectors. Pay close attention to mint marks strike quality and condition, because even modern coins can hold significant value when preserved perfectly, especially high-grade examples and proof issues. The total mintage reached into the hundreds of millions, making it widely available, yet its true value lies not only in money, but in meaning. This coin captures the essence of a rugged coastline, foggy harbors, towering forests, and a people shaped by nature and perseverance. When you hold the 2003 Maine Quarter, you are holding a chapter of American history, a reminder that every state, every community, and every generation leaves its mark. And this video is just the beginning, Because as we move forward, we will explore the deeper history of Maine, its native roots, its role in colonial conflict, its path to statehood, its maritime empires, and how all of that was distilled into one unforgettable coin. So stay with us, subscribe to Coins Quarter Dollar, and get ready to see your pocket change in a way you never have before. Because history is not locked in museums, it is right there in your hand. As we continue deeper into the story of the 2003 Maine quarter dollar, we move beyond the metal and into the land itself, a land shaped by ice oceans and time thousands of years before this coin ever existed. The region we now call Maine was home to native peoples, primarily the Wabanaki Confederacy, whose lives were closely tied to the forests, rivers, and coastlines. These communities hunted, fished, traded, and navigated the same waters later. Crossed by European ships and symbolized by the schooner on the coin, their knowledge of the land laid the foundation for survival in one of the most challenging environments in North America. When European explorers arrived, they were drawn by timberfish, and access to the Atlantic and Maine quickly became a center for shipbuilding, thanks to its endless supply of tall, straight pine trees. Those same trees later became so valuable that the British government marked them with the King's Broad Arrow, claiming them for Royal Navy masts. This exploitation planted the seeds of resistance and rebellion long before the American Revolution, and the pine tree standing tall on the quarter quietly honors that struggle during the Revolutionary War. The people of Maine played a critical role in privateering and naval defense. Local sailors used small, fast ships to disrupt British supply lines, proving that courage and strategy could overcome empire that independent maritime. Spirit lives on in the schooner design. Chosen for the coin, a vessel built for speed, balance, and endurance. Just like the people who sailed them after independence, Maine remained part of Massachusetts until tensions over governance, distance, and identity pushed its residents to seek statehood. The result was the Missouri Compromise, a landmark moment in American political history that balanced free and slave states and altered the course of the nation. Maine entered the Union as a free state, and in doing so became a symbol of political compromise, unity and progress values quietly embedded in this quarter dollar. As America moved into the 19th century, Maine thrived through fishing, lumber, paper production, and global trade. Its ports connected the United States to Europe and beyond. Its ships carried goods, stories, and influence across the world. And the North Star above the schooner on the coin represents that global connection, a constant point of reference in a world of uncertainty for collectors. The 2003 Maine quarter offers more than historical storytelling. It opens the door to modern numismatics. Mint state examples graded at the highest levels are sought after by collectors, building complete state quarter sets. Proof versions showcase mirror-like fields and frosted devices highlighting every detail of the pine tree, and ship error coins, die cracks off center strikes, and doubled dies. Add another layer of excitement for those who search rolls and pocket change, turning everyday finds into treasure hunts. This coin also represents a turning point in American coin. Collecting the 50 State Quarters program brought millions of new collectors into the hobby. Families, children, and history lovers who suddenly saw coins as more than spare change. And Maine, with its strong, clean design and deep symbolism, became one of the most memorable issues in the series as we reflect on the 2003 Maine quarter. We see more than a state. We see a story of leadership, endurance, and direction. Dirigo I lead is not just a motto. It is a promise, a reflection of a state that has always guided itself through storms, political, natural, and economic, and this quarter preserves that promise forever in metal. As we move forward in this series, we will explore varieties, values, market trends, and how this coin fits into the broader legacy of American coinage. So keep watching. Keep learning. And remember, every coin has a voice, and every quarter has a story waiting to be told right here on Coins Quarter Dollar. Quarter dollar, where every small piece of metal carries a giant story. And today, we are opening the door to one of the most visually powerful and historically rich coins ever released by the United States Mint. The 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter, a coin that does not just represent money but captures a living landscape shaped by wind time culture and American identity. This quarter belongs to the America the Beautiful series, a program designed to freeze the soul of the nation into metal. And when the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve was chosen, it was not by accident, because this place tells a story that stretches from ancient native tribes to modern conservation, from silent shifting sands to towering mountains standing guard in the background. The Great Sand Dunes Quarter is a reminder that America is not only cities and power, but also raw nature, untouched and endlessly moving. Imagine holding this coin in your hand and realizing that the design represents the tallest sand dunes in North America, rising dramatically against the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a place where sand has traveled for thousands of years, carried by wind, trapped by geography, and transformed into something almost unreal. This quarter captures that moment where earth and sky meet, where motion and stillness exist together. And that is why collectors and historians see it as more than just another quarter. The obverse features George Washington as redesigned in this series, bringing a classic face into a modern era, while the reverse design created by artist Glenna Goodacre shows the sweeping dunes with mountains behind them, symbolizing balance between movement and permanence. The year 2014 marks a moment in American coinage where storytelling became just as important as value. This coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, including proof versions and silver proofs, making it accessible to everyday people while still offering depth for serious collectors. The Great Sand Dunes Quarter also opens the door to conversations about geology, climate migration, and preservation, because these dunes are alive. They move, they grow, they shrink, and they respond to changes in wind and water, just like history itself. For a 2-hour video, this coin allows you to explore Native American presence in the region. Early explorers, settlers, the creation of the national monument, and its later designation as a national park and preserve. You can dive into how the Mint selects park designs, how artists translate landscapes into metal, and how collectors search for errors, high-grade examples, and silver versions. You can talk about why this coin matters today in a world where nature is constantly under pressure, and how a simple quarter can inspire curiosity, respect, and awareness. This is not just pocket change. This is a miniature monument, a traveling museum piece, and a symbol of how America chooses to remember itself. So stay with us as we go deep into the story, the design, the history, the minting process, the collector value, and the hidden meaning behind the 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter, because by the end of this journey, you will never look at a quarter dollar the same way again. As we continue deeper into the story of the 2014 Great Sand Dunes Quarter, we move beyond the surface and begin to understand why this specific landscape earned its place in American coin history. The Great Sand Dunes are not just piles of sand. They are the result of a rare and powerful natural system where wind, water, mountains, and time work together in perfect balance for thousands of years, streams flowing down from the surrounding. Mountains and time work together in perfect balance for thousands of years. Streams flowing down from the surrounding mountains carried sand into the valley. Seasonal winds pushed that sand toward the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, where it became trapped and slowly built upward generation after generation, creating dunes that rise higher than any others on the continent. And when the United States Mint decided to capture this place on a quarter, the challenge was enormous, because how do you freeze movement into metal? How do you show something that is never still? The artist answered this by creating flowing lines and sweeping shapes that give the illusion of motion. Even though the coin itself is solid and unchanging, this is why collectors admire the design, because it feels alive in the hand. This coin also represents a turning point in how Americans think about preservation. The Great Sand Dunes area was first protected in the early 20th century, at a time when many natural wonders were being destroyed for development and resources. Local citizens, scientists, and explorers recognized that this place was unique, not just for its beauty, but for its scientific importance and cultural history. Native tribes had lived near these dunes for centuries, using the land with respect and understanding, leaving behind stories, tools, and traditions that are still studied today. When the area was finally designated as a national park and preserve it became a symbol of long-term thinking, protecting not just scenery, but ecosystems, wildlife, and future knowledge. And that message is quietly carried by this quarter every time it changes hands. For collectors, the 2014 Great Sand Dunes quarter offers many layers of interest. Standard circulation strikes from Philadelphia and Denver are common yet high-grade examples, with sharp details and clean surfaces become more desirable, especially those preserved straight from original rolls. The San Francisco Mint produced proof versions with mirror-like fields and frosted designs, as well as silver proofs containing precious metal, which adds intrinsic value beyond face value. Error collectors also search for doubled dies off-center strikes and other minting mistakes that can turn an ordinary quarter into a prized find. This makes the coin exciting because anyone could potentially discover something special in everyday change. A 2-hour video on this quarter can also explore how the America the Beautiful series changed public engagement with coins for the first time in decades. People began actively checking their change again, learning about parks, monuments, and history simply by spending money. Children learned geography. Adults rediscovered national parks, and collectors found new motivation. The Great Sand Dunes quarter stands out in this series because of its dramatic contrast. Soft flowing dunes against sharp, rugged mountains, symbolizing the dual nature of America itself. Gentle yet powerful, always changing yet rooted in history. As the story unfolds, we can examine how modern coinage reflects national identity, how decisions made in Washington shape what stories are told and remembered, and how something as small as a $quarter can act as a bridge between past, present, and future. The 2014 Great Sand Dunes quarter is not loud. It does not shout wealth or power. Instead, it whispers patience, movement, resilience, and balance. And that quiet message is exactly why it deserves a deep, detailed exploration. So stay with us as we continue this journey through history, art, nature, and numismatics, because this single coin opens a path to understanding far more than its face value ever suggests.